All right, let's dive right in. Today we're exploring a really powerful idea from the mystic Sadguru, and it's this. What if the very thing you call your personality is actually the biggest thing holding you back? We're going to break down what he means by that, how we build this thing called the self, and what it really means to go beyond it.
So Sadhguru kicks things off with this pretty challenging statement. He calls the self that we've so carefully built, this identity we protect, an atrocity. And then he says, we're the ones responsible for it. It's a shocking idea for sure, so let's unpack what he's actually getting at.
So where does this all start? Well, it begins with understanding a really fundamental part of being human. We're always looking for something more, always seeking something outside of ourselves.
I mean, think about it. It just seems to be our nature, right? We're wired to chase after whatever we feel we don't have. If you're sick, health becomes the most important thing in the world. If you're broke, money is all you can think about. It's this constant, relentless engine driving us forward.
You know, Sadhguru tells his great story about a teacher who asks his students, hey, if God showed up right now, what would you ask for? And of course, the kids all ask for stuff they don't have, a new car, a bike, a pile of cash. The teacher gets annoyed and tells them they should be asking for wisdom or intelligence.
But then, one of the boys stands up and just hits him with this simple, brilliant truth. It's such a perfect observation of how we operate, isn't it? We're almost defined by what we think we're missing.
And that right there reveals the trap. If you spend your entire life asking for what you don't have, you're on a treadmill that never, ever stops. You get one thing and your mind just immediately moves on to the next thing you lack. It's a recipe for never feeling fulfilled.
Okay, so what's the vehicle for all of this endless seeking? It's what we call our personality. But Sadhguru has a very different take on this. He says that personality, well, it isn't who you really are.
This definition is really fascinating. He's saying personality isn't some fixed, essential part of you. It's actually just a construct, a whole system that you've built based entirely on your preferences. What you like, what you don't like. That's it.
And here's the kicker. We're not even consciously doing it. We're just grabbing bits and pieces from all over the place. From our parents, from our culture, from movies, and we unconsciously stitch it all together into this sort of caricature of a person.
To make this point, he shares another school story. A student draws this awful, distorted picture of a teacher that nobody likes. The teacher walks in, sees this drawing on the blackboard, and just explodes. Who is responsible for this atrocity?
And that's the metaphor for us. We're looking at this distorted, limited version of ourselves. But here's the crucial difference. We can't blame anyone else. We are the ones who created this atrocity, this self-limiting personality, from what was once an infinite, unbounded possibility.
So what's the big deal? Well, the problem comes when this personality we've built becomes rigid, when we identify with it so completely that it becomes this major source of our suffering.
Now, this sounds like the setup to a joke, but it's actually a really clever story to explain the deep connection between our unawareness and our pain.
So this old pirate is at a bar, and the bartender asks him about all his injuries. The wooden leg? Cannonball. The hook for a hand? Sword fight. And the pirate's totally fine talking about these huge wounds. But then the bartender points to his eye patch. The pirate says a bird dropping fell into his eye. The bartender is confused. How could you lose an eye from that? And the pirate says, well, it was the first day I had my hook on. He went to wipe his eye out of pure reflex, completely unaware of his new, sharp reality. And there it is. That's the key principle. The pirate didn't suffer from the bird dropping. He suffered from his unawareness of the hook. Our suffering comes directly from what we are unconscious of. And that is precisely what happens with our personality. It's a tool, just like the hook. But we become so identified with it, so unaware that it's even there, that it becomes this rigid mask we can't ever take off. It stops feeling like a tool and starts feeling like a heavy rock we have to lug around everywhere.
Okay, so that all sounds a little grim. But there is a way out of this trap. The solution is to shift our focus away from the created personality and towards our natural state of being, which Sadhguru calls presence.
So here's a huge distinction. Personality is an activity. It's something you are constantly doing, constantly feeding with mental energy, whether you realize it or not. Presence, on the other hand, isn't something you do. It's what's already there, what naturally emerges when all that inner activity just quiets down.
So the path forward isn't about adding anything new. It's actually a process of subtraction.
First, you just have to recognize that your personality is something you're actively maintaining. Then you practice withdrawing your support for it. Things like meditation are really just ways to stop feeling that constant inner chatter. As it subsides, your awareness naturally grows, and your presence just comes to the surface.
Now, this doesn't mean the goal is to become some kind of blank slate, a person with no personality at all. Not at all. The real goal is actually something much more creative, much more dynamic than that.
Look, you need a personality, you need a mask to function in the world and interact with people. The problem isn't the mask itself. The problem is being stuck with only one mask. The real goal is to have the freedom to consciously put on whatever mask the situation calls for.
And this just nails the final point beautifully. If you're stuck with one rigid distortion, one single personality, you become predictable, you become a kind of freak. But what if you had the freedom to create a new, perfect distortion for every single moment? Then you're no longer a freak. You're an artist. Life becomes a playful, creative dance.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. If you've spent your entire life believing that you are the mask, what happens when you start to realize that you are actually the one who's been wearing it all along? That right there is the exploration this whole framework invites you to begin.